yes, you're in a completely different location because Peg demands she be sitting here and then I be sitting here, and therefore we're gonna do this. Also, I had not actually planned on making this video. I know I did a reaction to the previous trailer for the teaser, I believe, for the Odyssey, the upcoming adaptation by Christopher Nolan that came out way back in like December. And I don't remember if I said it there, but it said like I'm pretty much staying very far away from information about the film. A little bit about the filmmaking is, you know, informational take, or if, you know, there's casting announcements, you know, in terms of confirmation of who's playing who. And I appreciate that Nolan keeps a lot of this very under wraps as somebody who likes to go in with kind of as little information as possible. I appreciate that about him. But I know there is a new trailer that dropped a couple weeks ago, and I got flooded with a lot of comments to watch it. From the tone of these comments, I think a lot of people are expecting me to like blow my gasket at it. And I'm gonna, once again, as with the previous trailer, I'm going in pretty neutral. I'm cautiously optimistic, if only because Nolan has a very good filmographic track record in terms of his work. I mean, and including his work in adaptation, he has several of his films are, I mean, and that's not even including the Dark Knight trilogy. Some of them are adaptations of source material. So I'm gonna be very curious as to what I see here. Again, I'm going in pretty neutral. I'll pause, give some thoughts. The big issue right now for me is, of course, that no one has the script. Nobody's seen the completed film, right? So I find it very difficult to make any sort of ironclad judgments without either having a bona fide complete script in my hands or sitting down and seeing the film. Because the movie for me is, as I've always said, it's going to hinge on its script for me. A lot of the other stuff I can kind of wave away as visual window dressing. The script is the most important thing to me. But that being said, let's watch the latest, what will probably be one of the final trailers for Nolan's Odyssey, which is coming out in, what, like, almost 2 months-ish? So let's go.
Tell me what you remember.
Ooh. Yeah, that's busted as hell.
A wife. A son.
And then what?
We won the war.
You did. Okay, so looks like Charlize Theron is playing Calypso. That's very interesting. I do appreciate that because casting of Calypso in a lot of adaptations that people might remember, like say the, what was it, 97 or something-ish that came out with Armand Assante. I believe it's Vanessa Williams who plays Calypso there. Calypso is often played by a woman of color. And that always kind of makes me uncomfortable. Now, before anybody gets their up in arms to like, why are you like that because you're racist? Actually, it's the complete opposite reason. Because I did see a lot of the chatter of everybody being angry about Zendaya. I believe she has been confirmed as casting for Athena, and I got into an argument with somebody who said, well, I can't see her as Athena, but I can see her as Calypso. And I was like, well, that makes no goddamn sense. Number one, Athena in the Odyssey, when she appears to mortals, is in disguise every single time. And she puts on multiple disguises. She's several different men, she's a young girl, she's all different looks. So you can just make an argument that Zendaya is her in disguise. And I won't bat an eye. I'll be like, that's fine. It's not like you wouldn't see people of different skin tones around this area. Egypt, various parts of North Africa, Asia Minor, so, and you know, mainland Greece and all this, they're all in trade and contact with each other. So it's not that unusual. In addition, I said it doesn't make sense that she's Calypso, because if the issue is really that, like, why isn't it a white person playing Athena because they're Greek? I'll be like, yeah, well then all of these characters are Greek. Every single person should be, for lack of a better term, a white person. They should be Mediterranean. They would likely get called a white person. And Calypso is older than Athena. She's a daughter of the Titan Atlas. So that makes no sense even age-wise, and Calypso's not showing up in a disguise. In addition, I do find it highly problematic that she's often cast as woman of color, mainly because Calypso is the one canonical essayer in the Odyssey. What she does to Odysseus is hold him captive for 7 years and essay him, because even when he air quotes agrees, this is under duress because he's physically unable to leave. He has no choice in the matter. He never gets a choice. So this sort of, I call it like the exotification or exoticization of Calypso, and is particularly of women of color, I find highly troubling. And I'm not the only one who could tell you about that trend. I'm sure there are many scholars, women and men of color, who could talk a lot more about the, as I call it, like the exotification of people of color, but especially women of color. And the fact that Calypso is always portrayed that way, and that she's always like this, you know, sensual, lusty kind of character, like it just makes me really uncomfortable when that character is then played by a person of color. I do think having it be Charlize Theron, like that doesn't make me bat an eye, like why not? I had initially thought she would be playing Circe because I figured like you give her maybe gold contacts if you want, and she could look like a daughter of Helios, but why not also make her Calypso? Why not? She's a fine actress. I mean, like, again, I have no real issues with any of the actors involved. They're all wonderful actors, a lot of whom have worked with Nolan before, and Nolan casts people for very specific reasons. So it's kind of interesting to see that. Another thing we're playing into here is memory, clearly, because she's talking to Odysseus like, what do you remember? We saw his busted up ship, and I've seen a lot of talk about the ships. I do know that they used essentially a Norse ship for the boat. Now, what's interesting about boats in the Bronze Age, a lot of people say, well, it should look like a trireme. Okay, well, the trireme wasn't there in the Bronze Age, right? It should look like a pentaconter. The pentaconter really only starts to come around in the Archaic Age. The Bronze Age ships were much shallower boats, and their shape, a lot of the ones that, you know, we have either found or reconstructed and everything else, it's not that far off from the Norse ship. The big difference is that the Norse ships are deeper. And I would wager, given they were shooting on location for this whole, like on the open water, I would think you do that for safety. Like a really shallow boat, I think you could probably risk it potentially tipping over. I mean, I don't know enough about boats, I'll be real, but like my brain, this logically to me makes sense. Sure, it's a similar enough shape to Bronze Age ships. It actually, I'm kind of fine with it. And it looks like something that when it's gonna get broken up, you're screwed. Also explaining like why are they running out of supplies? It's frankly, there was not a lot of room on these boats. There's just not a lot of room on them. It's part of why Odysseus and his men have supply issues, in addition to they sail out of sight of land. Like the whole idea is they are sailing kind of in uncharted, unknown waters, and that's terrifying to them because especially in the Bronze Age, and even a bit later on, they generally tried to sail inside of some kind of coastline. And again, Greece is a mainland but has a ton of islands. So there was usually a coast somewhere where you could then basically dock your boat. So, okay, we're playing with memory. This is interesting. From what we understand, Odysseus does not have any memory problems when he lands on ODYSSEY, which is Calypso's island. But given the amount of trauma he undergoes and how much of this story is also a character telling the story, if you also then want to bypass the characters of the Phaeacians, which is perfectly plausible and I think does make sense, him remembering and reciting the story to Calypso, given he's stuck there for 7 years, I actually think you can, in terms of streamlining, you can actually make that work. That actually might work out real well. Because yes, there is a pit stop to the Phaeacians in between him leaving Calypso's island and him getting to Ithaca. And a lot of the stop of the Phaeacians is for him to get re-kitted out and like get more wealth, basically because he lost it all. But it's also so he can then tell his story. So why not, if you're thinking script writing and I'm going to fit this into reasonably, you probably have like 2.5 hours, at most 3, but you're probably shooting for 2.5. Cut out the Phaeacians, streamline, so we go from ODYSSEY to Ithaca. If you're doing that, how do you then structure your story, right? The Odyssey is told in media res. It starts in the middle of the action. The first 4 books are with Telemachus. And then book 5, we meet Odysseus and he's on Calypso's island, and it's when he leaves. So much of his story, the famous parts of the travels, are told in flashback. So Nolan, who very much likes to play with time and does not need a linear narrative, I'd imagine he's going to play with the idea of this is Odysseus remembering and telling his story. And that makes it very interesting because memory and how that ties to you knowing who you are and your name and your deeds is super important to the ancient Greece. It ties to the idea of kleos, and it's also part of the nostos. The nostos is this journey home, this thing that he's trying to complete. I mean, again, part of the reason Odysseus is really so famous is that he has the nostos of all nostoi. His is the most insane return home ever. Again, it takes him like 20 years to get home. And he has all these wild adventures doing it, and he survives it, and he gets home and he completely sets everything right. That's part of the grand story. But his most infamous moment with Polyphemus in the cave, where he calls himself no man, the Greek word being outthis, he kind of, in a way, shoots himself in the foot by doing that, which is part of why he then doxes himself later, is that you need your name to be remembered, because your name and your deeds, like if somebody doesn't know your name, then you're not being remembered. You have no kleos. And the Greeks, again, these Greek heroes are willing to die for the idea of kleos. And it's really something you only properly achieve when you die, because it's these songs that are told of you after your death. It's about as close as the mortals can get to the immortality of the gods. So I find it very interesting. We're going to play with his memory, because he has to sort of remember who he is. And the condition of Odysseus and who he thinks he is actually core to the character. Again, everything really linchpins on that Polyphemus scene, because when he plays the no man trick, as much as he like in Greek, Homer puns like nobody has punned before, and he does something so stupidly clever, it's bonkers. But when it comes to the ethos of the Greek hero and their need for kleos and being known and recognized, it's a massive gamble he does. And it's why he then spends like a year on Circe's island, like kind of in a funk, because he doesn't really know like who am I, what is my purpose, have I ruined everything for myself, what's going on. And it takes him going down to the underworld and talking with Tiresias and Agamemnon and all these people for him to realize like, okay, my mission is get home. And you'll notice he takes, as much as he goes through some more obstacles after the underworld, they're not really detours. These are things that are just in his way while getting home, and he can't avoid them, so he has to go through them. It's not us detouring off, which is everything pre the underworld. Is he kind of detours off in side quests when he doesn't really need to. So I'm so interested to see how we play with memory, how the timeline is laid out. I'd give a bet Nolan will open in media res, and it's going to be a non-linear format. And I think it's that is the structure of the ancient poem. I think it's a very bold way to do it. And if anybody was going to do something in a non-linear manner, Nolan is the one who I think would do it. And he's one who I know is really good at doing non-linear narratives. So I'm super curious to see that. And again, if the whole idea is going to be Odysseus remembering his journey and trying to remember who he is, which could explain then a lot of the visuals, because if it's Odysseus's, kind of foggy memory and imaginations, it's similar then to a look of something you'd get in, like, say, The Princess Bride. Or even if anybody's familiar with the film called The Fall, it's directed by Tarsem, it stars Lee Pace. It's really beautiful, by the way, like visually, every scene's a painting. And part of that is a man and a little girl, they happen to be like bedmates in a hospital, and the man starts telling the story to the little girl. And what we see is the little girl's imagination, which is why there's some things that like don't necessarily visually line up with what he's telling, but that's the little girl's imagination. I could see Nolan playing with that. And he also likes to play with perspective, not only of like the audience, but an in-character perspective. Look at things like Inception or Memento. He's always loved playing with that. And again, Odysseus in the Odyssey is a character and a story that's ripe for that. So this must be the sacking of Troy. Coming in at night with the horse. Ooh, yeah. Oh, I love that tower falling down. I love that tower falling down, because the sacking of Troy was incredibly violent. It really, in a literary sense, sets the literary precedent for what the ancient Greeks imagined the destruction of a city meant. Because Troy, for all intents and purposes, in the Iliad especially, which is, we spend a lot of time hanging out outside of and sometimes inside of Troy, for all intents and purposes, it's a Greek city-state. It's a Greek polis. There's a couple elements that, the poet adds to be like, but it's foreign and it's non-Greek, like Priam with like 50 children and some sort of elements. But an audience who's listening in the archaic or the classical age would recognize that as basically a Greek city-state. So the idea that it's going to fall pretty spectacularly and violently and just horrifically, that would scare the shit out of them. And that's what they believe the destruction of a city would mean. And it was that they basically put it to the torch. They razed Troy to the ground so that basically nothing was left, and enslaved or killed all the people. So seeing that tower coming down, I think is great. Also, if that's part of the wall complex, the walls of Troy coming down. Those walls of Troy were like characters in and of themselves, because they were said to have been built with the assistance of Poseidon and Apollo. Part of the reason Poseidon was mad and kind of like not on the side of the Trojans is because he believed they didn't properly pay him for it. And there's a whole myth there that ends up involving Heracles sieging Troy, and he does in like a fraction of the time with very few people what took, 1,000 ships full of Greeks 10 years to do. It's because Heracles is the guy. Like, he's just the guy.
Help me go home.
This is a household waiting for master.
I
I want you to choose me.
Okay, hold on. I see a bow. Is that meant to be the Palentonos bow? If so, I'm not sure it looks right. Because images I've seen of the Palentonos bow. So Palentonos mean essentially recurve, like bent back. This was the famous bow of Odysseus. It was not likely seen or used by a lot of Greek men, so they didn't know the trick of how to string it and how much you need to have one insane leg strength, but you need to properly brace it a certain way to string it. It's a trick, basically. And it's usually shaped like this when relaxed. Obviously, you store it relaxed. I don't know much about archery, but even I know you store the bow relaxed, you don't store it taut. I can only assume that would lead to many problems, especially when these things are made of wood. Again, if you've seen any of my content talking about the Odyssey, and especially when I was talking about Epic the Musical, I noted that there's like insane lore about the bow of Odysseus, how it might actually have been a bow that was a gift from Apollo to a different king and how it eventually found its way into Odysseus' hands, and plus the slaughter of the suitors is happening on a feast day to Apollo, so it's all like divinely ordained. But okay, Rob Pattinson, I know, is playing Antinous, who's kind of the loudest mouthpiece of the suitors. There's like 3 main suitors, we'll say, who are named and particularly, we'll say, memorable here. And that's Antinous, Eurymachus, and Amphinomus. And all 3 of them are just sort of different shades of awful. Antinous is very cruel, and he's very nasty, he's extremely condescending, and he's also the kind of person who would absolutely come up with a stupid, violent plan and want to enact it. Eurymachus is who I call the snake oil salesman. It's the way he speaks, you just feel like a film of oil has been left on you, and you just feel like, bleh. No, thank you. I want none of that. I always say imagine like rich, preppy Northeast, but like with that kind of smarminess, if that makes sense, which I'm so sorry I'm stereotyping people as somebody who grew up in Buffalo. And then you have Amphinomus. He's the manipulator. He's terrifying because he only does what's best for him in any situation, but he's really quiet too a lot of the time, and that's what makes him so dangerous. Of course, they all die at the end. It's gonna be great. But Antinous is absolutely the one who talks back at Telemachus the most. And we saw, I know Tom Holland is playing Telemachus, which, I mean, if you tell me Matt Damon plus Anne Hathaway equals Tom Holland, I go, why not? Sure, they're all beautiful people. I'll buy it. I do want to start seeing some beard, though, generally. I need some scruff, because, again, this time period, and while we're obviously not going for supreme amounts of historical accuracy, clearly not in the costumes and or in the armor and everything else, which I'm willing to be like, oh, I wish we had it, but I'll wave it away as window dressing. Because one, part of it could be it just didn't look good on film. Like, never underestimate the power of does it look good on film. 2, also, we know that Christopher Nolan is red-green colorblind. If you look at his entire filmography, they have very specific color palettes and color ranges he sticks in. I'm assuming because those are the color ranges that he can see. And when you're going into post-production, you need to be able to see all of the grades, the color grades of your film, because you're likely going to do color correction. I will say, anybody who's sad about not having the Bronze Age costuming or the armor, like, I get it. I would love to see it on screen. I've just sort of, I'm old. I've been around long enough that I've just sort of long since accepted I'm never going to get it. In the same way, I'm probably never going to see these characters played by Mediterranean actors. There's a lot of hand waving away I kind of have to do for the sake of, but because for me, that's not the most important bit, at least with this story. In certain stories, casting can be super duper important, where it's like doing Wuthering Heights and Heathcliff is played by a white guy. It's super important that he's not. It's crucial to the character. In this case, yeah, none of them are Mediterranean actors. And and I can kind of wave that away. And people can say, well, what right do you have? Well, I am Greek. I am Greek. My family is based from Skura Verovicas, and it's in around the Sparta, Peloponnese area. So I'm here for actors who can act. That's what I care about. In terms of the palace, I kind of like how dark it is on the inside, because the interior of the palace would have been quite dark. There's not going to be a lot of windows the further in you get. They'd likely have a hole in the ceiling for when they would light kind of a grand fire in the central area of this, we'll call it the big main meeting area, which is really the only place the suitors would have really been in, is the main meeting area, and like kind of outside, we'll say a courtyard area, if so. They're not getting that deep into the interior of the palace. They're not getting into the family rooms and everything else. But you'd have a hole in the ceiling so that obviously the smoke can come up. Now, there could be elements of smoke damage to other things on the inside. That's a small plot point with like, why are the suitors willing to put away their weapons? As they say, oh, well, we don't want them damaged by smoke. We're gonna have a lot of fires roaring here. I will say, I can't remember if I noted in the previous trailer, but I'd seen that throne that's behind her, I believe, is a near replica of one that was found at the Palace of Knossos on Crete, which is the best site for the Minoan civilization. And I mean, that's where they were based. And the Mycenaean and Minoan aesthetic, if you will, was pretty close to identical, because especially eventually the Mycenaeans come and basically sort of take over take over Crete. And it just seems they sort of absorb them, and their aesthetics are pretty similar. And I do know that in the back, she's blurred out because we have focus on Penelope here, is, I believe, Mia Gothling Melanto, who's an awful character. And I'm kind of glad we're going to see some of the like crappy servants or slaves in the household, because you have good ones and you have shitty ones, like ones who stay loyal and ones who don't. And I do believe we have cast Eumaeus, who's the very famous, like very loyal swineherd, and he's even more special with regards to kind of the slaves of the household of Odysseus, because he's treated almost like family when he's first brought in. I believe he's being played by John Leguizamo, which I'm like, oh, I could totally see John Leguizamo as Eumaeus. I could totally see that, and I'll be so ready for that emotions. But it does look like there's also some paintings and designs on the wall. It's kind of hard because this is obviously a scene at night. I mean, the contest, the archery contest, and the bending of the bow takes place at night. It's going to be darker and hard to see. But I can see some sort of blues, and like a lot of the patterns look really similar to what I've seen at the Palace of Knossos, so it's nice to see. I wish I could look at them in more detail and in full brightness, but obviously I'm getting glimpses.
Ithaca's king is coming back.
No, he's not.
Ooh, okay. Ithaca's king is coming back. No, he's not. One, I see Anne Hathaway had a braid. Is that braid accurate to imagery we've seen of the Bronze Age? No, but I do like she has a braid. A lot of characters are described in the Odyssey as with lovely braids. We know that like braids and like hairstyles like that were very common for that era, for the Bronze Age era. I like that we see her at the loom. I would wager maybe this is when she just got found out, and especially if we're including Melanto, because I do believe it is Melanto who basically narks that Penelope is doing a trick with this shroud that she's weaving. The thing is that, is it likely the suitors would have gone into her rooms, wherever she's weaving? Because again, I don't think we know exactly where she's doing the weaving, but we do know she's kind of made to bring it out a bit more publicly for them to watch. Because initially, the reason she gets away with it for like a year or two is that these men don't know shit about weaving. It's a womanly activity. They don't know shit about it. Like, the men do not participate in weaving. They're like, IDK, this isn't supposed to take her this long to weave a shroud? Fuck if we know. So of course they get away with it. And the idea that Antinous would be kind of rage baiting her, totally believable. His behavior is particularly atrocious. Again, all of these, I mean, look at the magic word of Xenia. The suitors are poster children for terrible Xenia. And it's so bad that even after they're dead, and there's a whole thing where a couple of the suitors, their dads, like want to get revenge, they get told like by a seer who's on Ithaca that like, this is their fault. This is your kids' fault. It's also your fault for not stopping your kids. You knew how badly they were behaving and you didn't stop them. Also, I heard there was a god that was there when Odysseus killed all your kids. So like, divinely sanctioned. And Zeus was the god associated with Xenia. So like, your kid's done fucked up. And I kind of like how we're bringing Antinous. I'd wager we're maybe going to also conflate him possibly with like Eurymachus and Amphinomus. So as opposed to having all three, especially if you're including Melanto, it's just easier. Again, streamlining. When it comes to writing a script, streamline. When you're taking something as massive as the Odyssey, which in Greek is over 12,000 lines divided into 24 books, like streamline. Streamline best you can. This is where I'm most curious about the script, because I want to see like, what do you keep? What do you maybe conflate? How do you streamline? I like how much we're seeing of Ithaca though. So many adaptations like don't know what to do with the first four books, the Telemachia, with like that portion on Ithaca. And I think it's so great that the trailer is actually showing us a lot more than I thought we were going to get of Ithaca. And it does seem we're really going to do the Telemachus storyline, do the Telemachia. I've seen part of, I think, a clip where he's with Menelaus in Sparta, and Menelaus is telling them, I think, about the night they sacked Troy. And I think that's incredible, because that's pretty much ripped straight out of the Odyssey, even though we don't get the details exactly of what that story is, but we'll love to know that we're doing the Telemachia, because Telemachus is as important a character as Odysseus, and there's a lot of parallels in some of their actions in the Odyssey. So I'll be curious to see how that goes. And God bless Robert Pattinson being in this movie. I'm so glad for Robert Pattinson just having his run of films for the past like handful of years has been insane, and he's so fucking talented. I'm gonna be excited to like love to hate him in this movie. Oh, Polyphemus! Oh, that looked incredible. That little glimpse of Polyphemus, and again, it's so dark, but it's a cave. There's not a lot of fucking light. And oh, I am so excited for the Polyphemus incident. Again, it's the linchpin of the Odyssey. It's the most famous encounter. If you ever look up scholarship on the Odyssey, that book, Book 9, which is the whole Polyphemus incident, has the most scholarship written on it, bar none, in any other part of the Odyssey. Like, there's so much to talk about in that one scene. It's the one scene where, like, even if you're streamlining whatever the Odyssey, you can't cut the Polyphemus incident. If there's any incident you absolutely cannot cut, it's the Polyphemus incident. You just can't. It's too crucial to the character. It's too crucial to the story, and to the themes and everything else. That and the stringing of the bow. Like, the stringing of the bow, the slaughter of the suitors. Like, those are the things you cannot freaking cut. Like, absolutely cannot. They must stay. I love that cliffside. I love how rocky it looks because the Greek islands are very rocky. I know they shot all over the world for this. And the simple walls, actually, what I love is actually seeing how the walls are on that kind of, there's the slight kind of slant for those walls. I do believe archaeologically, like fortifications did look like that. I don't consider myself enough of an expert when it comes to Bronze Age archaeology. I'm very surface level. But again, this is stuff I can kind of wave away as window dressing because I also know this is not the classical age and all of those things. Like, we're not going to get all of those columns and everything else that we often associate with the archaic and the classical age because they just weren't there yet in terms of the look. I mean, they had columns obviously, but they look very different from what you think of when you think Greek columns. For me, it's just about good script, good acting. Because I know the visuals are going to be like grand.
He came back here to find all these suitors in his house.
They're pining for a daddy. You didn't even know. Like some sniveling bastard.
Ooh, okay. All right, let's talk about that one, John Leguizamo's Eumaeus. I love Telemachus talking with Eumaeus because while we don't see him talk with Eumaeus before Odysseus comes back, when Telemachus comes back, 'cause he comes back pretty much right after Odysseus, he does meet with Eumaeus and it's pretty clear they know each other and have a good relationship. So it's stuff that, you know, you don't see on page before then, but it's made very clear in the way that they interact and they treat each other. That it's like, so bringing him in, especially when there's other characters like Mentor and the like, you don't need the character of Mentor if you then bring in Eumaeus. And that's a good way to actually bring him in earlier. So then when Odysseus comes back and we do the whole thing with Eumaeus joining in and you know, being like so overjoyed that Odysseus is home and everything else, I think that's really smart adaptive writing. And again, when you're conflating characters and all that, with the amount of characters that are in the Odyssey, you do have to start conflating. You have to. It's basic script writing, you have to. I will say that bit with Antinous. We saw them push someone down. I wonder if that's a reference or if that's a sneaking visual of when Odysseus sneaks back into the palace because he's disguised as an old beggar. And they treat him horrifically. It's awful. It's really bad. They do kind of abuse Eumaeus. Verbally, I can't remember if they physically push him or anything. So that could have maybe also been Eumaeus. Equally so, their behavior is terrible. It's completely fucking unacceptable. But that line, you know, you're pining for a daddy you don't even know. I have seen chatter about this line. Now, I'm not that surprised by it for a couple reasons. One, I have seen that Nolan has talked about the translation he seemed to really rely on to write his script is that by Emily Wilson. I'll be real, I don't like Emily Wilson's translation. I like almost nothing about it, and I've read a bunch of her notes and kind of some of her introduction and stuff already as well, and her attitude towards translation kind of, and other translators really does kind of concern me in general, but I just don't particularly like her translation. I find it very dry. It just like strips all the poetry and emotion out of this incredible story. What it does do, however, is use very plain and simple language. And in a great irony, as much as I don't like it as a translation of the epic poem, in terms of a baseline for writing script dialogue, it actually might be a really good choice. And I think she even has the phrase "daddy's home" in her translation, if I recall correctly, or "playtime's over" or something. It's something very real, like, are you serious? But you know what? For a film script, that actually could work very well. Now, I did see a conversation, I thought this one was interesting, where they said, father denotes a role, dad denotes a relationship, and how he should be using the word, you're dreaming of a father, because he's talking about the role. He doesn't have a relationship with that person. Like, yes, but Telemachus wants a relationship with that person. This is not just about the role of father, it's about the person and the relationship he has to that person, because that is his dad, who is a great hero, and nobody knows what happened to him. So there's a lot of political turmoil just in the big question mark of what happened to Odysseus. Nobody knows if he's alive or dead. Now, everybody assumes he's dead, but nobody can give them confirmation of that. So that's part of why Telemachus goes out, is he needs to understand, who was my dad? What happened to him? I also think it's fine when it's coming from Antinous, because it's just extra denigrating. It's incredibly dismissive and demeaning and just rude and nasty. He's trying to needle Telemachus, and he's trying to piss him off, and he's also just being like, you ain't shit, which is stupid to say, but and Antinous is a handful of years older than Telemachus, because he claims to have a memory of Odysseus when he was a child, and Telemachus would have been a newborn. So we know there's, maybe like a 5-year difference between them at minimum. So he's young, but he's still a little bit older than Telemachus, so he's being a cocky dick, basically. And the sentiment is correct. Like, why are you longing after a person you don't even know? Yeah, but it's so important. And Antinous knows this. Again, he's just trying to be an asshole. I think that line, I've just seen so many people get up in arms over that line. I'm going, are we really at this point? This is what we're getting mad over. Again, none of us have even seen the movie or read the script. I'm okay with simpler and plainer language being used, because here's the thing. You can absolutely do a film with very elevated language. Absolutely you can. Nothing wrong with that. And sometimes you get away with it, sometimes you don't. And, when so much of the grandeur is going to be in the visuals and in all of this, having them speak plainly makes you realize, like, these were basically people. These were just people. The Greek heroes are extraordinary because of the things that they do. And Odysseus is said to be a very good speaker. And he's clever. He's a clever shit, basically. He's a cheeky little shit. That's why Athena likes him. But nobody said Antinous was a good speaker. Nobody said he was a good speaker. He's not. He's an asshole. I'm very excited to see how that turns out. Again, it seems like we really are getting the Telemachia, and I'm very excited for that, because it's the part that I call the Telemachus problem. Nobody ever really knows what to do with it, and that comes down to how you lay out the timeline of your narrative.
Who's looking after your wife and son?
Oh, okay. Let me go back here a second, because that seems to have been in the underworld. And I do know, I think they went to film in Iceland, I think on those black sand beaches there, which I think is a great look. It just looks otherworldly. I think it's a great look for as I call it, the front porch of the underworld.
For a daddy you didn't even know, like some sniveling bastard.
Briefly though, since I'm back on the sniveling bastard comment, which is like, ooh, careful with those words. But I see there's a bit of scruff in Antinous, and Telemachus is clean shaven, which would give him even more reason to be condescending, because again, for the Greeks, when you started to get a beard, you were then starting to be considered a man. All right, let me see this.
Who's looking after you?
Okay, is that Elliot Page? Interesting. I don't know who that's supposed to be, but it's clearly someone in the underworld, and the black, covered with dirt and what have you. I know Elliot Page has been cast. I don't think we have a confirmation on who. I've seen some rumors that they might be playing Achilles or Achilles, which is an interesting choice. And if it's Achilles in the underworld, I think that's totally fine. The great irony is that Elliot Page is too old. This is the great irony, is Achilles was maybe around 30 when he died. We also know that he was the youngest of the contingents that went to Troy. He was so young, notably young. And he was very, at least when he was young, quite androgynous looking. There's the later myths that come in where he's hiding out on Skiros, very reasonably passing as a woman. So picking someone like Elliot Page, I think, can totally make sense. But again, this is also Achilles in the underworld. This is the shade of Achilles, who's looking after your wife and son. And coming from Achilles, that's a valid statement, in the same way it would be a valid statement from Agamemnon. Both Achilles and Agamemnon left wives and sons behind. Now, with Agamemnon, with both of them, it kind of ended up tragic in their own ways. But I'm curious. I'd seen so much in the previous one with Agamemnon, and I'm not seeing a lot of him, and I'm just kind of like, where are you hiding Agamemnon from me? Because the talk he has with Agamemnon in the underworld really kind of emotionally shakes Odysseus a bit. Because the idea that everything that happens to Agamemnon back in Mycenae when he returns home, that freaks Odysseus out. But again, hearing this from Achilles, who's all about I lived for Kleos. Like, he went to Troy. He was not bound by the Pact of Tyndareus. He did not have to go. He showed up to kill and to die. And he knew he was going to die. It was a legit crush yourself out of the narrative mission. Like, he had no qualms about that. He rolled up there to brutally murder people in a spectacular fashion on the field of battle and then die spectacularly. Again, it's all, the Greek hero is chasing the perfect death. So that's interesting. Again, another thing I'm very curious about, the underworld section. I mean, again, I know where they shot it. We saw a couple glimpses of it in the previous trailer, and visually, ooh, it just looks so, like, your hair stands up on it and you feel it's wrong. And again, I mean, it should. Like, living people are not supposed to be traveling over here.
Wife and son.
Do you see?
Oh, that's Tiresias. Okay, so that was definitely Tiresias, the blind prophet. I saw a bit of blood around his mouth, so I'm assuming we're properly doing the sacrifice. When they go down to the underworld, they dig a trench and they have to basically spill the blood. I believe it's of a black sheep. I think it's black. Fairly certain it's black. That would make sense. Tangent there we don't need to get into. But these shades basically drink the blood, and it kind of makes them able to converse with Odysseus. And so Tiresias is who he's come to see because he needs to talk with him and be like, so what do I do? You could see the future. Love that. The antenna was taking a knife. Curious what that's about. Very curious. I mean, look, he absolutely plots to kill Telemachus. Now they plot to waylay him on the water. But again, this is all out of context. There was no context for what a lot of these scenes from Ithaca, when exactly they're taking place. Though I would wager these scenes where Tom Holland looks so kind of fresh-faced and clean-shaven are like early in the Ithaca story, like before Odysseus has come back. I think he should come back a little weather-worn. So I mean, I'm making assumptions here.
Bringing vengeance.
Bringing it all.
Yes. Bringing vengeance, bringing it all. In a way it is. I mean, it's not just vengeance, it goes beyond that, but the idea of taking vengeance, reacting to extreme trauma and the rage and anger that comes with that is absolutely something that follows the Odyssey, even out of the Iliad. Both Odysseus and Telemachus have moments of kind of extreme cruelty that's sort of a reaction to trauma, because they are said to be like so overwhelmed by a kind of anger and grief, and that it just makes them do something, well, kind of stupid. And go into in the case of Odysseus, he's also going to have his moment of what is known as Aristheia, which is like greatness, which is the slaughter of the suitors. He becomes like a one-man army, basically, and just completely buck naked kills everyone, which I'm looking at you, Nolan. How much is Odysseus wearing during the slaughter of the suitors? I'll be fine with a loincloth, but can we get him like... It should be such a catharsis when it's just him as the one-man army killing everyone. And it's orgiastic in its violence. I mean, if you really want descriptions of basically what metal does to flesh in that age, you read the Iliad. But the Odyssey and the slaughter of the suitors spares no accounts, or even in things of describing how they blind Polyphemus is pretty graphic. And now, what is this going on here? Is this a flashback to Troy? Oh! Wait. Interesting. Okay. I see plate armor. If I had to guess... Hold on, let me watch the rest of this.
I need everyone at this party dead.
I'm gonna watch this bit again. Okay. I'd heard about this, and I'd only seen the one shot of them from far away. These dudes in plate armor. Initially, I'd wondered, are they fully made of metal? They don't necessarily have to be. But I see hands and stuff underneath, which is interesting. Here's the thing. If I had to guess, the Laestrygonians. If I had to guess, this is the Laestrygonian encounter. And here's why I'm going to speculate that. Because the Laestrygonians, you want to reasonably cut. But here's the thing. You need them, if only to explain how do 11 of Odysseus' 12 ships just go kaput. It's the Laestrygonians. But here's the thing. The Laestrygonians are these massive cannibal giants. And meeting them comes right after meeting Polyphemus, a massive cannibal giant. They're really similar. And the Laestrygonians don't really talk. I mean, I think we say that one of the the wife of the king like yells, and they don't speak. They are just literally physical giants who eat people and barbarians, and they chase the Greeks out, and these ships are trapped in the harbor, and they destroy 11 of the 12 because Odysseus happened to be at the back of the line and was able to get out. So when you're filmmaking, like, well, we just did a cannibal giant, like we just did Polyphemus, and it includes throwing rocks at the ships. Like, obviously Polyphemus misses because he's blind, but like, if you do it, it's just a repeat. So you want to do something different because you want to explain the kind of supernatural, we'll say, nature by which 11 of these 12 ships went missing. And the reason I was curious is, like, do I see human hands underneath, is because I wondered if you then make the Lacedaemonians automatons, which might seem, maybe, bear with me here, kind of odd, except here's the thing. The ancient Greeks, in their mythology, had the idea of automatons. Hephaestus builds some that kind of help him out in the forge. I think it's often said that they help him get around because obviously he's physically disabled. But also, I believe in the story of the Golden Fleece, I can't remember if it's from the Argonautica or a different source, there's said to be this gigantic, and I do mean like giant, automaton that essentially guards the island where the Golden Fleece is and will attack ships that are coming or leaving. So like it's another obstacle if you can't try and steal the Golden Fleece, right? So if you're then like, okay, well, I don't want the Lacedaemonians to be cannibal giants who hurl rocks because we literally just did that. What do I make? Why not go for something like the automaton, something that is otherworldly, often linked with gods or divine characters, and the Lacedaemonians are either children or grandchildren of Poseidon, you know, the god who's pissed at Odysseus for everything that just happened in the Polyphemus incident. If you say that these giants are somehow related to a god, and they can be automatons, and if they're not, because again, I see what looks like, you know, human flesh we're seeing in the hands, so they're being in there, and then this could be divine armor. I mean, giants who have divine armor, maybe Poseidon gave them swag. I don't know. And again, I don't know what this incident is supposed to be. I'm assuming the Lacedaemonians, because it's the only one I can think of where there are characters who are gigantic, and it makes sense that Odysseus and his men are basically going to get the shit kicked out of them. And it's something you can do where it's not just a repeat of cannibal giant throws rocks at ship. In addition, if we are framing this as Odysseus trying to remember something, like trying to recover kind of his memory that's all addled from being just like, pretty dramatically thrown about, washed about, probably dehydrated, starving, all the trauma and everything else. If this is his memory he's trying to get, he could be fully misremembering something. And this could be maybe somebody wore a glinting piece of jewelry or something, and it makes him think of the glint of the armor. Again, I don't know the structure of the script.
Not a fucking clue.
I don't know how we're framing this incident, and I don't even know what incident it is. I'm suspecting the Lacedaemonians. Hell, maybe they are still even automatons, and, they look human on the outside. And again, most automatons are being forged by gods, usually by Hephaestus. So why not make them human-like? He's that good. I don't know. That's very interesting, because clearly these are not meant to be human, and these are meant to be something I would likely say divinely related because of how out of time they feel.
I need everyone at his party dead.
Ooh, yep. I like that. I need everybody at his party dead. So is that the plan, to waylay Telemachus on the water and kill him and just naturally saying, well, maybe they got hit by pirates? Because look, raiders from the sea happened all the time. There was, Odysseus has the epithet of Tholiportos, which means saccharine cities. The Greek heroes raided places all the time, and they're usually coming from the water. So the idea of attacking on the sea makes sense, and that is a plan that he wants. They fail because Athena rolls up and is like, not today, suckers. But, okay. I do. There's so much emphasis being put in on Antinous, and I like that, because it means we're really keeping Ithaca in the forefront of everyone's mind, because that's the stakes. The stakes is getting home to Ithaca and being able to set Ithaca right, and hopefully right now getting there before shit gets, the powder keg that is that situation blows. It's part of why Athena is like, hey, Dad, Zeus, we really need to get Odysseus home now. It's been maybe kind of cool for a while, but we gotta go now.
I can still save them.
Oof.
You're a
Terrible
man who
there.
needs to control his fate.
Ooh.
But you cannot control this.
That world.
I saw a puppy. Don't you fucking dare. He's gonna do Argos. That's gonna break me more than anything else. Argos is one of the most tragic fucking scenes in the Odyssey. When I did Odyssey Book Club, I had to stop. Because I got really emotional, almost crying. Oh, that's gonna hurt. That's me. Nolan, how dare you? It looked like Antinous put Telemachus on the ground with a sword at his throat. That is yikes. Yikes. No. They never actually go through on committing physical violence against Telemachus. The only time violence starts is once the slaughter starts. Then it's a free-for-all. But, ooh, no, Nolan.
Is God.
Oh, there it goes.
No one could stand between me and home.
I love the bad weather, because that is an issue.
Keep us free!
Oh my god, Charybdis! Wait, no, I saw Charybdis, go back!
God.
Fuck you with the Argos, I can't take it.
No one could stand between
I saw
me.
Polyphemus, so they're gonna have him chase them, probably throw rocks. Love that.
Not even the gods.
Keep us free!
Oh, so that looks like we are doing Scylla and Charybdis, the straight. So I love keep her straight. They really have a fine line they have to walk going through that. And it just looks like a whirlpool, and I love that. It's a whirlpool. That's the danger of Charybdis. The men being up that high, it's gotta be Scylla. Which I'm curious, again, how much of this is he gonna show? Or how much of it is he gonna leave like just sort of this terrifying mystery? The men running to their ships along the flat, because I saw the forestry, again, I think this is the Laestrygonian encounter. It's the only thing that kind of makes sense to me. The bit with Polyphemus crashing through the trees, I bet that's after they run out of his cave and he's trying to, blindly kill them, even still. And they've stolen a bunch of his sheep while they're at it. Oh, this is so interesting.
I think it's asleep.
I'm gonna have to find that in IMAX. I'm gonna have to find it in IMAX because I want to see that on IMAX. I've only seen 2 other of Nolan's films in IMAX, and that was Interstellar and Dunkirk, both of which phenomenal in IMAX. That is the Polyphemus incident I'm so excited for. I'm very curious about the plate armor individuals. Obviously not period, not in the Odyssey. I'm assuming it's some sort of interpretation of the Laestrygonians. It's the only thing that comes to mind for me. Who knows if it's something else, and them running out of the forest along a flat stretch of beach to get to their boats. And the fact that there's multiple boats is what makes me think that's probably still part of the Laestrygonian encounter, because again, that's where 11 of the 12 boats just get nuked. And just interesting. There's so many things that are super fascinating. And again, for me, I'm trying to keep myself reasonably neutral. I'm excited about some things. I'm confused by some others. I'm like, I gotta see how you play this out. And that's my forever thing, is I need to see how it plays out. I don't have a full grasp of this film. None of us do. I'm never gonna have a full grasp until I watch it. Even better if I can then have the script to look back at later. Because it's gonna hinge on its script. And again, it seems we're structuring this as sort of a tale involving memory and your personal perspective and everything. And so that's why I'm so curious about some of these visuals and how they've chosen to interpret a lot of the elements of the Odyssey, and again, where they choose to streamline, how they choose to streamline, and composite characters together and everything else. Adaptation is an extremely difficult process. One of my favorite classes I took at uni was taught by a working screenwriter who's now just a very close friend, and it was on film adaptation. It is supremely difficult. And taking something like the Odyssey, again, in Greek, is over 12,000 lines in a very specific style. Trying to stream that into like a 2.5-hour film, that's an undertaking in and of itself. And I mean, as I say, I always commend anybody who tries. And it just makes me so curious as to what Nolan decided to hone in on for his version. It does seem that like memory, storytelling, family, home, like all of these things, which are all a part of the Odyssey, he's really getting on that line. I'll get home like nobody can stop me, not even the gods. That's very dangerous rhetoric. But if he's being told Poseidon's hampering your way, or, the gods want to stop you, he can be like, well, I'm going to get home anyway. Maybe that's right before he gets in trouble. I mean, that looked kind of early given his beard. He suffers for his hubris. Again, when Greek heroes basically, are corrupted, this idea of the corruption of the hero, the narrative will not reward them for it. So again, Odysseus is gonna do some stupid shit in the Odyssey and he's not gonna get rewarded for it. Most of the heroes have an issue like that at some point or other. I'm very curious. I'm going in with a very open mind. Part of it could be that like I have watched Nolan's entire filmography well before the Odyssey and everything else was announced, and I know how good he is. And for me also, the script is the most important part. Everything else to me is kind of window dressing when the script is the thing that is the most important here. Because Nolan is a known entity and has a track record for the visuals are going to be very grand, and he picks actors, especially ones who he's worked with before, and he give great performances. So for me, the script is the most important thing, and I know nothing about the script. Definitely probably going to end up seeing that opening weekend, so I can only hope I have a good audience or I'm going to be so pissed off. Theater etiquette is in short supply so many times when I've gone. But yeah, interesting. Again, I'm most curious about really those plate armored individuals. I want to know if that's the Laestrygonians, and I want to know how that came about, which means I'll also then just be hunting for like production videos, being like, tell me what you were thinking, because I want to know.